All right, this is part 2 of Chapter 12, Section 2 notes. So your next heading is investigation and oversight, and that's going to be investigation and oversight of the committees. Oversight just means that there are kind of not people watching you, but there can be, it's just like watching to make sure you're following the rules. That's what oversight means. So congressional committees and their subcommittees often conduct investigations into public issues. Okay, so the congressional committees often conduct investigations into public issues. So public issues can be anything from, it's just really anything that affects the public. So like public issues on healthcare, public issues on, like the coronavirus that's happening right now. So they can conduct investigations, these committees, into these public issues. And the reason they do that is to gather information because they want to make sure, so they want to ensure that federal agencies are following the rules or following what they're supposed to be following. So to ensure that the federal agencies are following the law, or sometimes they will do it to raise a public awareness or bring attention to a certain public issue. All right, so your next heading is select committees. So this is another kind of committee. So all we've been talking about so far are the committees and their subcommittees and what happens to the bill in those committees. So there's another kind of committees called select committees. And select committees, so you can do like in a hyphen and do the definition, they are typically temporary and set up to investigate a specific issue, one certain thing. So for example, the Senate Watergate Committee, that was the name of the temporary committee. It investigated the Watergate scandal, which was the scandal with Richard Nixon bugging the phones and all of that. So that's an example of how they'll raise awareness for a public issue or make sure that federal officials, Richard Nixon was the president, to make sure that they're following the law. So that's what these select committees are, temporary, and they investigate certain issues. Another example is the Iran-Contra Committee, which examined the arms for hostages deal and the illegal aid to the Contras that Iran gave. And there's another example with the Senate Committee on Indian Affairs. So your next type of committee is a joint committee. And then joint committees include members from both houses or chambers of Congress. So it includes the members of these joint committees are people that are House of Representative members, and they're people that are senators or chambers of Congress. So there's a chart over here that shows the permanent groups. So these are we're just going to list a couple examples. There are permanent groups or permanent joint committees, while others are the select committees, which was what we just discussed in the slide previous. So this chart shows the permanent committees, which are the permanent joint committees of Congress. And so we'll just list a couple examples. We won't list them all, but one example is the Joint Economic Committee. So it addresses matters related to the U.S. economy. There's the Joint Committee on Library, and it addresses matters related to the Library of Congress, which keeps very important historical documents, and not just documents, artifacts and things like that. And so then a last example, there's some more down at the bottom, but is the Joint Committee on Printing. It oversees the government printing office and other printing by the federal government. So money and other things that the government prints. So these examples, why are they joints instead of separate committees in the Senate and another separate committee in the House? And the answer to that is because all of these issues are for the entire United States, not just one chamber of Congress. So they need to be on these committees together because they're making decisions for the entire United States on these committees. So another type of committee in Congress is called conference committees. So conference committees, I should have scrolled up more, I'm sorry, are temporary, and they're joint panels or joint committees. And that, remember, joint is meaning both chambers of Congress. So both chambers of Congress. And the conference committees are formed to create a compromise bill when each house or chamber of Congress has passed a different version of the bill. So when each chamber of Congress has passed a different version of, we'll say, the same bill. All right, and that is the last slide for this section. Please, if you take a picture that I can read your handwriting and it's not blurry and it's vertical and not horizontal. If you typed your notes, then please submit those to the module. And as always, if you have any questions, please contact me through Canvas. You can always just send me a message.